This is a Var Torah on a special Shabbat. It's the last of the four special Shabbats before Pesach. And the two points, a double parsha actually, is Parshas Vayakhel and Pekudey. Now, the first of these parshas, and it's also Shabbat as Chodesh, which is the Shabbat before Nisan. Now, looking at these two parshas, which are usually a double parsha, they're always read in Adar and just in Adar, a month of Adar now, which is the 12th and last month. And we see the whole cycle of months starts again in Nisan, which incidentally is alluding to Nisim miracles, and it's the only month where we do not use the Persian name for when we were in exile. Now, Parshas Vayakhel is the third parsha dealing with the Mishkan, the sanctuary. In this parsha, we have an interesting combination of things. It's talking about the actual call of Moshe to build the Mishkan and how all the people in Bnei Israel contributed to it and how it was built. So there we're looking at the collective. We're looking at the Jewish people as a whole. Now, in Parshas Pekudey, which is an accounting of all the materials and valuable things like silver, gold, and what have you, are how all of them were used and accounted for. So it is looking at the individual, showing what Moshe did. It accounts how and how the work was all brought to him, and he miraculously assembled it because each of the individual pieces no human being could normally deal with. So what did it do? The miracle was made every time he touched one piece of Mishkan, it sprang up to where it was supposed to be. Now, originally, the Mishkan was supposed to be built on the 25th of Kislev, which of course is the date of Hanukkah. So even though we didn't get the Mishkan then, it was later on, it was the dedication of the base of Mikdash. Now, we see that on this Pashat level, basic level, that for us to merit the Mishkan, which was established in Rosh Chodesh Nisan and the Shekhinah entered it, it requires both the unity of the Jewish people as a whole. That's the first theme of the first parsha, and you also need the theme in the second parsha of individual responsibility and how even an individual can do incredible things if he truly trusts in Hashem and he takes the first step and Hashem will help him carry through. We see that in many other places. Now, that is the basic explanation. The Parshas Vayakhel, Chodesh comes from the first mitzvah in the Torah. In fact, Rashi wrote, the whole Torah could have started in Parshas Bo with the Jewish people declaring the first month, and because all the other things up to there was to the whole Sefer Bereshit and Parshas Shmos was to establish that God had created the universe and guided it, and therefore, since it was His, He could give the land to whoever He wanted, and that was the basis of us getting Eretz Israel. Now, I'd like to take some of these themes on a deeper level. Now, if one looks, you got two types of sanctification here. One of those got the sanctification of space, because what in effect happened, we created a holy space where Hashem could be resident, on this planet. There's a midrash that explains it, that there was this king whose beloved daughter, the princess, was going to be marrying a prince in another country. But all he asked is that there be a special set of rooms set aside for him. So anytime he wanted to go visit his beloved daughter, it was available and he'd have a place. And that is Shem. Even though Shem created the whole universe and everything's his, he wanted a place to dwell with the Jewish people. And that is the concept of space. Now, as I explained in Syria in different parshas, the dimensions, it's a whole interesting discussion of how the infinite combines with the non-infinite, Shem and space, and that's true here. Now, what is Shabbat HaChodesh telling us? Shabbat HaChodesh is telling us that on one level, that we could have the combination of space and time, which is the most impersonal of objects, and by doing that, Hashem's presence came back to the earth, who had left earlier, his Shekhinah, and the Mishkan, as I said, represents spiritual space. Now, Shabbat HaChodesh, in addition, is the recognition of time. Time, which is the most impersonable, personal of objects. And what does time do? That time, which was the month of miracles, is when Hashem took residence, so to speak, in the Mishkan. And only through sanctification of time, the most impersonal of things, inexorable things, no matter what one does, time's going to, the sun goes up, goes down, and the earth revolves. But ours, we sanctify that time. No other nation. We have a calendar that's a lunar calendar, but it's lunisolar. We adjust for the adjustments in a month. Unlike the B'nai Ishmael, who have a lunar calendar, but it drifts. Why they were entitled to that is a separate discussion for another time. And now to be able to do that, and this is something that Vayakhel-Pekudey discusses, is they had to do the repair of the sin of the golden calf. And one understanding of it is the building of the temple, physical manifestation, spiritual repair. And if you look at it, even though we no longer have the Mishkan and the first and second temple were destroyed, the Haftorah, which is deals with Haskell, deals with the future third temple, which will be the final temple, and which, by the way, everything in here, our temple is in the seven. First and second temple were in sevens. Third one will be 8, which will mean totally above nature. And there is another factor here, which is there is another there are more themes here I would like to briefly cover. I've already mentioned the Egel Zahav. Now, what is the significance? Materials are misused to create gold. Here they're used to create something essential. And this purity. In fact, if one looks at the Zohar in Vayakhel-Pekudey, there's a whole listing of how each part of the temple represented that unification and compensating for the sin. known as Raza de Vuda de Mishkan. And then it's entered, and what is the month? It symbolizes the Jewish people. Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, we can't see. It then reaches its zenith on the 15th day of the month, and then goes down till it shrinks again. And it's a time, as I said, a renewal. Now, why this particular time of year? Why couldn't it have been at some other time of the year? And let's look at this time. There are two opinions of when world was created. One was that it was created in Tishrei, which we know Rosh Hashanah, where we judge the material things. And as the Shem B'Shmuel explains, the other time is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Now, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, we're judged for spiritual things, and it's part of a larger cycle. They began on Tu B'Shvat, when it goes 40 days, we reach the 25th of Adar, which is the first day of creation, and with Rosh Chodesh Nisan being the sixth day. Now, in that period, which we're about to enter into, which starts with Kaf Hey in 2 days, and incidentally, I'd like to dedicate this year in memory of my father, Shabbat Elias Neshama, whose 26-year site is today. In any event, what happened? So we're going through a very spiritual time, and if we use that time properly these days, it's going to have us go to the Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is a renewal, and that is one thing that's going on. So it's a time of promise, and it's going to ultimately lead to the Rosh Chodesh Nisan and Pesach, which is the beginning of our liberation, which can only happen after we got the mitzvah of the new moon, that time is in Hashem's hands. And now there's something else going on that should be a reassurance for all of us, and it ties this period into Vera's forthcoming period of Pesach and Sfiras Omer, as it is explained in the Sefer Chesed Shel Avraham, which was written by the grandfather of Chida, very famous Rav, that while we are asleep, for the 30 days between Purim and Pesach, while we sleep, 1/30th of our spiritual humets is removed. 1/30th. So that when we get to Rosh Hashanah, Pesach, our Yetzer Hara is totally gone. And for that one night of Seder and the next day, we are totally pure on an elevated level. Then Hashem brings it back to us on the second day of Pesach. And that's why we count this Sfiras Omer. And each one of those 49 days gives us a chance to do the purification, which commemorates what happened, that Hashem took us through 49 levels. As I explained last week, on the wings of eagles, he raised us, elevated us, despite all our impurity, till we became pure at Matan Torah, which is Shavuos. Now, I'd like to wish everybody in this time we're in, we should hold in, realize that Hashem is running everything, and whatever is happening is for the good, and may we merit this coming year, the redemption, and wish everybody good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom, and even though it's coming soon, Rosh Chodesh Tov.